Let's begin with this year's theme for the annual lecture, which is Balance for Better. And that goes along with this year's International Women's Day, the theme for the International Women's Day for this year. But then what caught my attention there is the topic, which says, "Who said so? Changing the status quo." Why that topic?
Well, we have seen in all sectors, irrespective of whether it's the public sector, whether it's business, whether it's governance in terms of the corporate world, that there is always an assumption, a blind or silent assumption that there are certain things that women cannot do or achieve or rise towards. So the question we are asking women is that who actually said so? Did you come into an environment whereby it was just a silent thing, and so you didn't challenge the status quo and just sort of fitted yourself into that scenario? Or are you now really thinking inwards and asking yourself, who actually said so? Why am I going that way? Why have I allowed myself to just go with the flow? So we want to get women in the room to start thinking around those lines, and also to hear from those that have broken that barrier.
Well, I guess that goes with the adage that says, what a man can do, a woman can do better and even more.
Well, I guess because the men are tired of us focusing too much on them. So what I would say is, what a woman can do, she should do excellently well, so that nobody will question her impact.
Now, you've had this lecture over the years. This should be the 15th one. How much impact would you say these lectures have had on the participants and, of course, on women in business in general?
Well, I would say that there has been a lot of impact, because I've known women that have grown from where they were just by coming to some of these lectures and where they are now. But I think most significantly amongst all the achievements is one of the lectures that the current Emir of Kano, former governor of CBN, came for, Alhaji Sanusi Lamido Sanusi. He was one of the speakers at our annual lecture. And after that experience with the women in the hall, I think he also chose to challenge the status quo. And he went back as the governor of CBN then and put into policy a law for the banking and financial sector, that every board must have a representation of at least 30% of women. And that was when it was put into the policy of this nation. Until today, that policy is still standing. And for the first time in the history of this nation, we have 3 board chairmen that are women. It has never happened before. For First Bank Access, yes, Mrs. Ibukun Awoshika for First Bank, Mrs. Domoren for GTB, and Mrs. Musung for Access Bank.
From what you have said, looking at the country as a whole, what do you think, perhaps not just from the government and even from the private sector, what do you think they can actually do to bring out the best from women, perhaps in terms of laws or regulations?
Well, I would say, first of all, increase representation of women now in selective positions. Elections have taken place that is outside the direct influence of the government. But in terms of selective positions across sectors, it is very important for the government to understand that the balance is needed, not because women just want to make noise, but because it has been proven internationally, locally, that once you have a balanced board, whether irrespective of the sector, once you have a balanced board, and I will use public sector in this case, you achieve greater results. You increase revenue. You have more diversity and ideas. I mean, Rwanda is a case study that the world is now learning from. At least so we have local, that's African examples, but internationally, the examples are just too many.
So what do you consider as the biggest challenge for women in the business environment?
There are a lot of them. But if you say challenge, I would focus again on personally. Some of the things I think women need to do is to really believe in themselves and not just hold back. They need to project themselves more. But I would say again, from an organizational perspective, they should give more women a chance. In fact, some organizations have gotten it excellently well. I know CBN is doing it, First Bank, a lot of all these organizations, I mean channels as an organization is doing it. But basically, I would say organizations should give more women a chance. They should train them. So it's not a matter of just giving them a platform, but also ensure that once you give them that platform, you also build them up to be able to function effectively in that role.
That brings us to the issue of education. What role does early or advanced education, play in bridging gender gap in business?
It's very key. It's very key, very essential, because again, there is no area that you want to become a specialist in that you don't have to learn, that you can't do it effectively without learning more about that sector. So for everybody that has excelled in anything, they have become experts in that thing. And I think education is very key because it gives you the foundation to build on expertise. And so if we don't get that education right, you find out that a whole generation that is happening in this nation, at least I know that some areas of this country, we all know, are quite backward in educating the girl child, and you can see what is happening in those areas in terms of economy and so many other things. But I would say that once you see women in a locality that have been well grounded in education and have been given an opportunity to build on that education, I mean, it is so evident the kind of development that is going on in that area. I don't want to give examples, but it's obvious for us to see. I would say every woman should have a vision for her life. She should not limit herself. She should believe in herself. But after believing, she should have a plan for her life. She should surround herself with the right people that will help her achieve her plan. I want women to know their capacity and to know their limits. So I would say leverage on relationships, learn to speak up when you should, if not you will become a doormat. And I think women should also rise above the limitations of culture, tradition, religion, and family constraints. We need to rise above them and just have an identity and believe that we can make it and really work to make it.
Now, there are several cases of workplace sexual abuse. What is WIMBIZ doing to actually curb this kind of act?
Well, I would say that, everything in life is also centered around advocacy and the laws of the nation. I know that WIMBIZ just advocates a lot for quite a number of issues in the workplace. And I also want to clearly state, so that, again, to appease our men, that we are also aware that some women are actually the ones that do the sexual harassment. So it's not really just a one-sided thing. It's just that in terms of numbers, it is the cases against women are more. But having said that, I would say that there are various discussions in the room. We're always looking every year at what are the issues that are really affecting women. There are certain things that we are not experts on, and there are certain things that we don't go fully into, but we have partners that we can recommend some of these women going through things for. I give you an example. I know somebody just communicated to us recently on sexual harassment she had gone through, and we were able to direct her to the right legal organization like FIDA, to also sort of listen to her and also guide her on how to go about her case. So sometimes we may not advocate openly all the time, but we also try to look for help personally